So I just did me some talking to the sun. I said I didn't like the way he got things done.
There isn't a single performer from the 1940s or 1950s who wasn't influenced by Bing Crosby's songs. Even though wealth and fame can seem seductive, they hide a terrible history of tragedies and family secrets. His children's suicides raise the question of why. What was the significance of Bing Crosby's subsequent confession? Join us in mourning for Bing Crosby's two sons who killed themselves following his heartbreaking admission. Before analyzing these findings, it is important to understand the background. Hollywood's glitz and beauty sometimes conceal the darker truths that are hidden behind it. Bing Crosby's public image as America's finest entertainer hid a deep family tragedy that would haunt him for the rest of his life. However, what precisely are these confessions that the reader found intolerable? What do his boys think of these admissions? The story of Bing Crosby began in the Pacific Northwest in 1906. Born on May 3, 1903, Harry Lillis Bing Crosby Jr. was a multi-talented American. He worked as a businessman, radio broadcast, producer, singer, and actor. Harry Lowe Crosby, his father, was an accountant who was born in England in 1871 and died in 1950. In addition, Catherine Harrigan, born in 1873 and dying in 1964, was the daughter of a builder from County Mayo in Ireland. Her ethnicity was Irish-American. Bing Crosby was born into a house his father had built, the fourth of 7 children. In 1906, his family moved to Spokane, Washington, to find work. 6-year-old Harry Lillis Crosby loved a funny newspaper column called the Bingville Bugle. He was from Bingville, and an older boy who lived nearby and loved the Bugle as much as Crosby did called him Bingo. After the last vowel was removed and the name was shortened, Bing became his lifelong nickname. During the summer of 1917, Crosby was employed as a property boy at Spokane's auditorium, where he witnessed renowned artists such as Al Jolson enthrall young Bing. Crosby was the first significant multimedia celebrity and unquestionably one of the most well-known and influential musicians of the 20th century, despite his later denials to the contrary. When Bing was 3, the Spokane family moved to the mining and lumber town and uprooted their life. Harry, Bing's accountant father, owned one of the first record players in Spokane, so he grew up listening to the music of great artists like Al Jolson. When Bing started at Gonzaga University, a boyhood buddy had already given him his nickname. Despite the emphasis on masculinity in his Jesuit upbringing, Bing excelled in public speaking and athletics. He loved language and elocution, and he was a great debater. After attending Gonzaga University's law school for a short time, Bing followed his love of music by joining a local band with pianist Al Rinker. Bing had a difficult beginning and was notoriously untrustworthy due to his jazz-era lifestyle, but in the end, his charm and genius were evident. He and Bob Hope maintained their friendship despite their fierce rivalry on the field, and their relationship helped create the renowned Road to Film trilogy. Crosby caught the eye of Paul Whiteman, a well-known band leader of the day, while he was a guest at the Los Angeles Metropolitan Theater in 1926. On December 6, 1926, he and his singing partner, Al Rinker, with whom he had collaborated since the Spokane days, made their stage debut at Chicago's Tivoli Theater on a weekly salary of $150. When Whiteman brought in pianist and aspiring lyricist Harry Barris, Crosby and Rinker had already found some success. The ensemble was called the Rhythm Boys and joined Whiteman's vocal trio. Mildred Bailey, Hoagie Carmichael, Eddie Lang, Jack Teagarden, Tommy Dorsey, Jimmy Dorsey, and Bix Beiderbecke were among the musicians they worked and recorded with. After achieving his first #1 single in 1928 with a jazz-infused rendition of Old Man River, Crosby swiftly rose to prominence as the Rhythm Boys' star. He and the other Rhythm Boys eventually left the group and joined the Gus Arnheim Orchestra as a result of their growing dissatisfaction with Whiteman. The other Rhythm Boys found themselves vocally eclipsed after signing with Brunswick. Soon after, the band members got into a fight and split up, which allowed Crosby to focus on his solo career. Harry Barris, a bandmate, wrote some of Crosby's subsequent songs, including At Your Command, I Surrender, Dear, and Wrap Your Troubles in Dream. In the 1930s, Crosby rose to prominence as one of the most well-known American vocalists. He appeared in 10 of the top 50 tracks in 1931, either by himself or with other musicians. His debut feature film, The Big Broadcast, 1932, left a lasting effect, and in 1939 he signed long-term contracts with Decca, Jack Kapp's new record label. Around the same time, Crosby made his radio debut with the Carl Fenton Orchestra as a solo performer on a well-known CBS program. In 1936, he took over his former boss, Paul Whiteman, as host of the weekly Kraft Music Hall radio program on NBC, where he remained for the next 10 years. During the period of recording innovations, Crosby inspired the private singing techniques of many male vocalists, including Frank Sinatra, Perry Como, Dean Martin, Dick Haymes, John Lennon, Elvis Presley, and Crosby himself. According to Music Digest, Crosby's recordings accounted for more than half of the 80,000 weekly hours allotted to recorded radio music in America in 1948. Crosby was praised by Yank magazine as the person most responsible for raising the morale of American troops serving abroad during that year. He was voted the most admired man alive in the United States in 1948, surpassing even Pope Pius XV and Jackie Robinson. Crosby exploited German tape recorder technology in his quest for better recording quality. His financial support enabled Ampex to produce the Ampex 200, the country's first tape recorder. The innovation that transformed the industry, editing and overdubbing, thrilled musicians like Les Paul. Beyond the development of technology, Crosby's proficiency with the microphone, which he employed to great effect throughout his concerts, had a big impact. His deep baritone voice and careful attention to lyrics enthralled people all across the world. One of the main reasons for his enduring influence was his ability to transition between radio and film. Despite his enormous success in the workplace, Crosby struggled with personal problems, such as his intoxication and family conflict. There are conflicting views on his parenting style, and the relationships between him, Dixie, and their kids were complex. Dixie suffered a terrible blow when he passed away in 1952, and it affected his life and career for a long time. Despite his personal struggle, Crosby will always be remembered for his technological and artistic contributions to the entertainment business. Crosby's entertainment has an impact on millions of people's lives worldwide. Despite being well known for his public persona, he remained private and disclosed virtually little about who he really was. Phil Harris, one of his closest friends, claimed that they didn't fully know him. He showcased his acting abilities in a more serious role with his performance in The Country Girl. Although the producers were hesitant to cast him as the troubled actor, Frank Elgin, he won over the reviewers and dispelled their reservation. Crosby rose to fame as a World War II radio host, thanks to his rendition of Irving Berlin's White Christmas, which inspired sentiments of peace and nostalgia. In addition to his long career in entertainment, he had a variety of interests and hobbies, including baseball and horse racing. He left Gonzaga University a sizable gift, demonstrating his generosity as a patron. It is regrettable that he was a poor parent in spite of his exceptional qualities. Despite being enmeshed with the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, Dennis, Lindsay, and Gary Crosby's lives were marked by significant hardships and, ultimately, tragic endings. Despite being a household name in entertainment, Bing Crosby's children struggled with issues like substance misuse and strained familial bond. The lives of three Crosby children, Dennis, Lindsay, and Gary, and their tragic endings, may teach us a lot about the difficulties of having a renowned father. On January 5, 1934, Lindsay Crosby was born in Los Angeles, California, to Bing Crosby and Dixie Lee. Dixie Lee and Bing Lee were his parents. Despite not being as well known as his father, Lindsay Crosby had to overcome numerous challenges in his life. Lindsay was under a lot of pressure to live up to his father's illustrious legacy. He was one of Bing Crosby's 4 children, along with his sisters, Mary Frances and Gary. Lindsay was raised in a wealthy household due to his father's wealth and notoriety. In addition to being a well-known singer, Bing Crosby is most known for his main roles in timeless hits like Going My Way and White Christmas. This accomplishment allowed the Crosby family to live comfortably. As he grew older, Lindsay Crosby adopted many traits from his father. He appeared in a number of movies, such as The The Star and the Story, 1955, and The Big Night, 1951. He never achieved the same level of fame or had a career in entertainment as his father. Throughout his life, Lindsey Crosby struggled with alcoholism. Among other issues, his life and the lives of many members of his family were plagued by substance abuse. At the age of 51, Lindsey Crosby sadly committed herself on December 11th, 1989. His loved ones and admirers were deeply saddened by the news of his demise, which served as a sobering reminder of the struggles he had faced. Dennis and Michael Crosby are the sons of American music legend Bing Crosby and his first wife, Dixie Lee. Dennis was Bing and Dixie's second son. Like his brothers, he was born on July 13, 1934 in Los Angeles, California, into a family of renowned entertainers. Dennis Crosby had an extremely affluent life and was exposed to the entertainment industry at a young age because his father was one of the most well-known celebrities of the 20th century. Dennis Crosby gained enormous success thanks to his smooth singing voice and his main roles in timeless hits like Going My Way and White Christmas. As children, Dennis Crosby, his brothers Philip and Gary, and sister Mary Frances were often photographed with their father in family pictures and at public gatherings. However, Dennis decided to pursue a career in entertainment, just like his father. Dennis Crosby was a mainstay of the television and movie industries in the 1950s and 1960s. Following his debut in Mr. Corey in 1957, he went on to play a number of cinematic parts, including The Night the World Exploded and The Purple Hills. In addition to appearing in movies, he frequently appeared as a guest star on sitcoms in the 1990s, such as The Jack Benny Program and The Red Skelton Hour. Despite his best efforts, Dennis Crosby was never able to achieve the same degree of success in show business as his well-known father. Because of Bing Crosby's massive legacy and the pressure to live up to it, Dennis most likely struggled to advance in his career. Dennis Crosby's personal life is not without its challenges. He had to cope with alcoholism, which ran in his family, in addition to his own difficulties. Dennis Crosby tragically committed suicide on May 4, 1991, when he was 56 years old. Bing Crosby and Dixie Lee were the parents of Gary Crosby, whose real name was Gary Evan Crosby. The Crosbys were well-known American actors and musicians. On June 27, 1933, he was born in the City of Angels. Like his siblings, Gary had a long history in entertainment, but he also had personal struggles and big hopes for the future. As he grew older, his appreciation of music became more intense. Gary quickly won over audiences with his extraordinary talent, charming them with his charisma and silky voice. He refused to let his notoriety impair his judgment or his vision, and he always remained modest and grounded despite his evident talents. But it was Gary's unwavering commitment to social justice and equality, rather than his music, that truly set him apart. Gary used his position to push for change, speaking out against oppression and injustice wherever he saw it during a time when intolerance and prejudice were widespread. As a performer, Gary enthralled audiences with his charisma and dramatic flair. His live performances enthralled audiences, and his voice illuminated a world too frequently shrouded in darkness. For Gary Crosby, being the firstborn child of Bing Crosby and Dixie Lee was a remarkable honor. He was considered an older brother by Dennis Crosby and Lindsay Phillip. Growing up, he took use of all the benefits that come with being the son of a well-known Hollywood actor. Gary made the decision to pursue a career in show business after witnessing his father's success. He wanted to become well known for his acting abilities and singing voice. His career began with his vocals on The Bing Crosby Show, his father's radio program. Bing expressed his sense of responsibility and optimism in his 1941 speech to high school students, which he gave shortly before the US entered the war, by emphasizing the significance of the students' future contributions to society. The year that Bing Crosby had the most success in the radio industry was 1946. Even though NBC strictly prohibited him from doing so, he still wanted to record his monthly live program. Unfazed, Crosby discovered ABC, a new radio station ready to replicate his Hollywood broadcast. Crosby's action elevated ABC from a minor rival, despite the network's awful reputation. As more and more celebrities adopted pre-recorded broadcasts, live radio became less popular. Gary made his film debut in Mr. Corey in 1957. His lengthy acting career was included in a number of films, such as The Big Night, 1951, and The Night the World Exploded, 1957. Around that time, he also made brief appearances on a number of well-known TV programs, including Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Playhouse 90. Gary found it difficult to establish himself as a vocalist despite his aspirations. He released songs and albums, but never quite made it big, following in his father's footsteps as a music superstar. Gary Crosby's tense relationship with his well-known father was one of his personal struggles. In his 1983 book Going My Own Way, he detailed the harsh discipline, brutality, and neglect he and his brothers endured at the hands of their parents. Gary's personal battles with addiction were also covered in the book. Despite not being as well-known or prosperous as his father, Gary Crosby was a key player in the Crosby family's influence on the entertainment business. His candid story shed light on the complex connections inside the family, offering a fresh perspective on the beloved Bing Crosby. Unfortunately, on August 24, 1995, Gary Crosby passed away tragically and suddenly at the age of 62. Going My Own Way, a candid and enlightening memoir of his life, was published in 1983. Gary's account of how his father, Bing, severely and brutally punished him and his brothers, Philip, Dennis, and Lindsay, was the most upsetting section of the book. Gary described the physical and psychological abuse he received, including beatings with belts. The public has never seen this side of Bing Crosby because of his well-known friendliness and good looks. Gary Crosby also talked about the difficulties his father's drinking caused the family. He said that Bing Crosby's excessive drinking was the cause of the strained relationship within the Crosby family. It was an extremely personal disclosure that exposed the dark sides of Bing's life. In his memoir, Gary described his relationship with his father as tight. Bing felt neglected and abandoned since he was so preoccupied with his work that he was frequently absent. Gary could see that there was a clear emotional distance between them. Gary Crosby described in great detail the struggles of his siblings Dennis and Lindsay, who both suffered from addiction and inner demon. In the novel, a family was seen coping with a number of issues. The majority of the novel focused on Gary's life and the bond between him and his father. It did, however, also touch on his future goal. He talked about how he often lived in the shadow of his famous father while attempting to succeed as an actor and singer. Dennis, Philip's twin, is uninterested in the family's past. Gary's company is how he describes the book. Although Dennis admits that Gary is upset, he doesn't dispute his account. He went on to explain that his 45-year-old baby brother, Lindsay, is with Gary. Lindsay, on the other hand, hoped that the book would end many of the long-standing myths and falsehoods and was glad his brother Gary had written it. Lindsay's backing, however, is unexpected. He was said to be Bing's favorite of the four. Gary's public statements have awakened other friends and family members. The 69-year-old bandleader Bob Crosby defended his brother Bing by claiming that he had no memory of anyone being physically touched. On July 13, 1934, Philip Crosby, real name Philip Lang Crosby, was born in Los Angeles, California. He was Dennis and Crosby's older brother. Singer-actor Bing Crosby and his first wife, Dixie Lee, were his well-known American parents. He was their eldest son. Philip Crosby leaves behind three half-siblings, Harry, Mary Frances, and Nathaniel, from Bing Crosby's second marriage to Catherine Grant, in addition to his four children, Mary Elizabeth, Dixie Lee, Flip, and Philip Crosby Jr. Like his siblings, Philip Crosby became a performer, following in his father's footsteps. Despite having a comparatively lengthy career in show business, he was never as well known as his father. He acted in a number of movies, including Holiday Inn, 1942, where he played a younger Jim Hardy. His father played Jim Hardy. He would sometimes share the stage with his father, and he would sometimes appear as a guest star on television programs. As far as his hobbies were concerned, Philip Crosby was never content with just one. He worked as a Marine and a stockbroker during his career. He told People magazine that his last performance was at a Burbank Elks Club party in 1983. A whole year had passed since his last appearance. He had already been married 4 times, with 3 of his wives being Sin City showgirls. He was also repeatedly imprisoned for drunk driving in 1980. He told the magazine that he no longer drinks, even though he had been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous for 18 months. According to Chuck Morrell, the team's standout fullback who lived with Crosby at the time, Philip's father had a driver bring him a brand new Chevrolet when he was a college student. Despite leading a diverse life, Philip remained connected to the entertainment industry through his family. Unfortunately, Philip Crosby struggled with alcoholism and other personal issues throughout his life. Just like other members of the Crosby family, these problems affected both his personal and professional lives. At the age of 69, Philip Crosby passed away on Thursday, January 13, 2004. His loved ones and admirers were devastated by the loss of yet another Crosby child who had grown up in the spotlight because of their well-known father. Bing discussed his thoughts of remorse regarding his parenting in a 1959 interview. He acknowledged his shortcomings as a dad. He also expressed his belief that he had failed them by lavishing them with material goods, expecting excessive work and discipline, and not giving them enough time and attention. Bing went so far as to claim that they did all in their power to help us, including their mother, who is also their wife. It's important to note that Lindsay supported his father at that period, stating that he struggles with feeling like a bad parent. Lindsay found it really upsetting to read that his father had said such a thing in an interview. Bing continued to express his annoyance when he replied that all he wanted to do was give his boys a small portion of what his father had given him. On October 14, 1977, Bing Crosby died at the age of 73. Lindsay Crosby committed suicide in 1989 and Dennis Crosby followed suit 2 years later. Gary Crosby died in 1995 as a result of complications from lung cancer. Thank you very much for your time. Watch another of our fun videos and subscribe to our channel before you leave.